Ew, it's nasty out there. Ugh. Oh god, you hate to see it. However, you love to see me looking this good on camera. Do-overs, baby. Woo! Hi, I'm Abby, I have a lot of records, and this is Vinyl Monday. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. Vinyl Monday is the series where once a week I sit down and just talk about a classic album I love. If 20/30 minute episodes aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday in 60 seconds, both here on my channel and over on my Instagram. I am wasting no time getting into this week's episode because this is a monolithic record. We have a lot to get through. So, this week's album is Are You Experienced by the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Congrats to those who guessed this one. Remember, if you want to play along, all you gotta do is check out my community tab. That's where I post the hints to what album I'll be covering next week, behind the scenes photos, I run polls over there. You can find that on my channel. And hey, haven't we done this before? The short answer, yes. Yes, we have. The long answer, I first covered Are You Experienced back when this channel was in its infancy, right? It was one of the first 5 albums to get the long-form Vinyl Monday treatment, I think, and I'll be totally honest with you, it was pretty rough. I left a lot of valuable information and insights out because, 1, I wasn't skilled enough to make them yet, and 2, I was still working out this series formula. Not to mention my hair was wrong, my makeup was wrong, and the lighting sucked. A year or so later, I know I can do better. You all deserve better. So here we are, doing this album justice. Diatribe over, let's get this plastic off. So my copy is an early reissue from 1968, and let me tell you, it's in beautiful condition. This is one of the cleanest covers that I have in my collection, new issue or used, and I feel bad taking it out, even though that totally defeats the purpose of vinyl. And this is the stereo mix. Stereo was more popular over here in the US, while this album in mono was more popular in the UK. I am in the market for another copy just because I don't want to destroy this one. It's so nice. Maybe the MCA double LP one, just so that I get all of the UK tracks after the US track listing. This sleeve was designed by Carl Ferris. That's a name we've heard a lot on this series. Hendrix first reached out to Carl after seeing the work he'd done for the Hollies. I think it's the Evolution album art, which he photographed with a fisheye lens. The guys had a 2-day photo shoot at Kew Gardens in London. I'm a dumb American, so I'm probably saying that wrong. The winning photo was taken on day 1. Carl worked out his own infrared film technique to get these gorgeous blues, pinks, and purples. He's always had a great eye for getting those hues. I love this jacket Jimmy's wearing. It was a gift from Mick J's brother. You see in some photos with Marianne Faithfull that Mick J had a pretty similar jacket to this one. It was from a tiny boutique in London that would pull people off the street and have them model for the paintings on the clothes. That's so cool. One of you goobers should paint me on a jacket. Carl also picked out the clothes that the guys are wearing on this cover. Kudos to you, man, for picking out the feather boa. I love a good set of feathers. And he lobbied for the matching afros, which were just a gift to rock and roll history. But mostly me. Now, the UK cover by Track Records exec Chris Stamp, that wasn't a total disaster like the Axis cover was, or the Naked Lady cover of Electric Ladyland. But like, come on. This one is so much cooler. How do you even compete? The UK cover set the unfortunate trend of Hendrix never really getting what he wanted for his album art. The only art Hendrix ever really liked was the stuff that Carl Ferris did, and I respect him for actually taking cues from the music and listening to Hendrix's wishes. If you saw that clip hanging from a tiny strand of hair, no you didn't. On Are You Experienced, we of course have the Jimi Hendrix Experience. We have the man himself on vocals and guitar, Noel Redding on bass, and Mitch Mitchell on drums. We have a special guest on this record. The Breakaways do backing vocals for Hey Joe. This album was produced by Chaz Chandler, engineered by Dave Siddle, Mike Ross, and one of the Vinyl Monday All-Stars, Eddie freaking Kramer. Roll transition. Our story starts in the spring of '66 at the Café Wa in Greenwich Village. This is where Jimmy James and the Blue Flames have a brief tenure as house band. It's really hard to imagine today, but before forming his own group, Jimi Hendrix was struggling to scrape by. Unless you're someone like Al Cooper playing on every single record ever, it's tough getting by as a session musician. One night, Keith Richards' girlfriend, pre-Anita Pallenberg, sees the Blue Flames on the New York club circuit, and she is blown away by Jimmy's talent and natural charisma. She refers him to the Stones' manager at the time, Andrew Oldham. This didn't really go anywhere, so they pass word along to the Animals' ex-manager, Chaz Chandler. Jimmy and Chaz connect over one common interest, a song called Hey Joe. Jimmy did a version of this tune with the Blue Flames, and Chaz really believed that this song could be a hit. Hendrix was willing to do whatever it took at this point to be a star, but the Blue Flames kind of weren't. Jimmy signs a contract with Chaz and moves to London without his band. Now, the Experience was put together specifically to spotlight Jimmy. He was always the star, and the guys kind of knew that. Jimmy bumps into blues guitarist Noel Redding at an audition. Yes, Noel was originally a guitarist. He's quiet and a little weird, but he's friendly, and they connect over a shared appreciation of the blues. Someone on Hendrix's team, I'm not sure who, suggests that Noel switch to bass, to which he said, yeah, sure, why not? With Jimmy singing and playing guitar and Noel on bass, there was only a need for a three-piece band, but the only guy harder to find than your bassist is your drummer. Somewhere in London, some other group has just shot themselves in the foot by firing theirs. Coincidentally enough, this band, also called the Blue Flames, Chaz caught wind of this firing, had a mutual friend phone this guy and bring him in for an audition. Enter Mitch Mitchell, and the Jimi Hendrix Experience is born. Again, hard to believe, but the Experience was rejected by a label or three before getting in contact with the Who's management. They're venturing out on their own to establish one of the first independent record labels in London. Recording Are You Experienced takes place over 5 months, starting in October of '66 with Hey Joe. And things are off to a rocky start. Mitch is chronically late, so Chaz cuts his pay to make an example out of him. Since Track Records was an independent label, they didn't have the big bucks of, say, EMI. When you're making psych music, that can be a problem. The guys had to work as efficiently as possible, which is tough when you had a brand new band with a producer who hasn't gotten to know them yet. They couldn't afford to fight amongst each other because they literally couldn't afford the time. And because Track Records wasn't actually up and running when Are You Experienced production began, Chaz had to personally fund some of the recording. Once the guys inevitably blew the original budget, Chaz had to open a personal line of credit to get this thing done. I can imagine him thinking, oh great, now I have to open a personal line of credit to fund these dorks. I have no money now. And Jimmy, for the love of God, please don't use that twin stack. You're gonna blow this place up, and we don't have any fucking money. No, I wasn't joking. Hendrix wasn't allowed to use his twin stack of Marshall amps in the studio because it was too loud for the space. It was rattling everything inside, and they couldn't exactly edit that out. Thank God Polydor saved the day. They helped Chaz foot the bill for the work done at Olympic Studios. The production timeline goes even longer because the Experience are taking frequent breaks to tour. They have to fund this thing somehow. In January of '67, smack in the middle of production, and after the guys had spent all day working on Purple Haze and When Cries Mary, they play a gig at the famous Bag O' Nails Club in London. If there's one thing to know about the blues-based bands in London in the 60s, it's this. Everybody knew everybody. So when you consider that, everyone hanging out at the same clubs makes perfect sense. Take this principle and crank it up to like 100 for the night the Experience was at Bag O' Nails. Half the Beatles were there, 4/5 of the Rolling Stones were there. I don't know where Charlie Watts was. I guess he needed his beauty sleep. Half the Who were there. Donovan was there. The Eggman himself, Eric Burdon of the Animals. You name the group, they probably had someone representing them there at the club that night. Terry Reid was there too. He remembers seeing Jeff Beck of the Yardbirds walk in and thinking, what's this, a bloody convention or something? The audience was so stacked, it was ridiculous. The stakes were higher than Hendrix on acid. He shows up looking like hell. The band opens with a cover of Wild Thing, and they crush their set. If time travel was real, fuck Woodstock, I am going to that gig, but only after I swing by the Grandy to make some enemies of the wives and girlfriends of the MC5. Afros, am I right? Are You Experienced production wraps in April of '67, with Third Stone from the Sun being the final song completed. There's some goofy stuff happening with the singles, though, that are happening in the midst of production, so I can't talk about them in the release section like I usually do. In the UK, Hey Joe was put out as a single back in '66 and did really well. Then came Purple Haze, and after that, Track Records pulls a trick that was unheard of at this time in the music industry. While Purple Haze is still in the top 10, they throw out The Wind Cries Mary as a single. By releasing a cover as the first single, an electric original as the second, and an acoustic original as the third, they were actually showing the Experience's breadth of skill. Things went very different here in the US. Hey Joe didn't do anywhere near as well as Reprise expected. In fact, it didn't chart at all. After a spectacular stumble like that, Reprise was unsure about issuing Are You Experienced here in the States at all. That is, until Monterey Pop. Paul McCartney had remembered the Experience from the Bag of Nails, and pretty much every other time those guys tore up London and begged for them to be on the Monterey bill. The Who went on before the Experience and trashed their instruments as per the usual. However, Jimmy was not about to have a bunch of white British blokes upstage him at an American festival, so he asks around for some lighter fluid, and the rest is rock and roll history. The Experience at Monterey, and specifically Jimmy's little spectacle with the guitar, that was exactly the breakthrough the guys needed to convince Reprise to issue Are You Experienced here in the US. My track listing goes as follows. Opening up side 1, we have Purple Haze, followed by Manic Depression. Then the Experience's rendition of Hey Joe, followed by Love or Confusion. Then May This Be Love, and side 1 closes with I Don't Live Today. Side 2 opens with The Wind Cries Mary, followed by Fire. Then we have Third Stone from the Sun, followed by Foxy Lady, and the album closes with the title track, Are You Experienced? Are You Experienced was released in the UK in May of 1967. The US release doesn't come until August. Remember, The label needed that extra push to be convinced of the experience's power, and Monterey Pop did it. It peaked at number 5 in the charts over here, and number 2 in the UK. It probably would have made the number 1 spot the week ending June 10th if it weren't for the Beatles releasing Sgt. Pepper's. Now, you may have been wondering this entire video, okay, Abby, I know you wear some whack shit on this series, it's kinda your thing, but well and truly, what the fuck are you wearing? Well, let me tell you a story. In the spring of 1967, a 17-year-old aspiring actress from Reseda, California, attended a Love-In in San Francisco wearing this outfit. She bumped into photographer Alan Daviau at that Love-In, and he took her headshots in the very same outfit the very next day. These headshots made it all the way up to the right people, and she was cast for the Foxy Lady portion of the Are You Experienced film. That girl was Miss Pamela. We know her better now as Pamela Des Barres, author of I'm With the Band and the most famous groupie in rock and roll history. Aside from some Frank Zappa projects, her acting career never really took off, but she met Noel Redding on the set of the Foxy Lady video. Those two really hit it off, and he got the rock star treatment and I'm With the Band. It's pretty well established if you've been on this channel for long that I have a thing for Noel Redding. Pamela's book is why. And the afro definitely helps. The Foxy Lady video, though, is fucking impossible to find. I've never seen it, and I've been looking for it for years. It crops up on YouTube, Vimeo, Dailymotion sometimes, but it's struck down almost immediately every single time. Maybe if the Hendrix estate wasn't such a disaster, it would see an official release someday. Oh well, a girl can dream. Just 6 months after Are You Experienced came Axis Bold as that's sideways. And also backwards. Just 6 months after Are You Experienced came the follow-up, Axis Bold as Love. This is a ridiculous turnaround time for albums, even by standards of the 60s. Remember, The Experience was constantly touring, and they somehow had the time to record Axis. Are You Experienced is now considered one of the pillars of psych rock, a defining album of the genre. It was hailed as, quote, the Ulysses of music by Reuben Jackson at the Smithsonian. I don't know how much Cream would appreciate this. This is remembered as one of the greatest debut albums ever released. So, what do I think of Are You Experienced? Looking at the track listing, this thing reads like a greatest hits album. It's so stacked, it's stupid. Firstly, the gap between the US and UK releases, thanks in part to Reprise's initial hesitance to issue this one out here, is why, or part of why, the US and UK track listings look so different. Reprise looked at the record's chart performance / reception across the pond, evaluated how the singles did over there versus over here, and went, okay, what's working for them clearly isn't working for us. We need to reevaluate. I might be biased, being a dumb American, but I feel this is a stronger track listing with better sequencing, and it gives the record a clearer artistic vision. I get a much better idea of what the experience was all about from this version of the record as opposed to the UK. Case in point, Purple Haze. Today, it's considered the experience's greatest hit, and it makes for one hell of an opener here. When I try to picture an ideal opener for a debut album, Purple Haze is it. I've talked in the past about the spectrum guitarists exist on, ranging from fluid to rigid, but there's another axis that runs the other way. Soloist versus riff guy. Normally we think of Hendrix as more of a soloist, at least I do, but here on Purple Haze, he is firmly a riffs guy. This riff takes the bull by the horns and commands it through the gates. We are in the arena. This is Are You Experienced? Speaking of solos, you might be surprised to hear that Manic Depression is one of my favorite Hendrix solos. I feel it's overlooked, and I'm not sure why it is. I wish more people talked about this solo. Man, is it dynamic. It doesn't settle in one place for too long, and it stays changeable, interesting, exciting, right up until the very end. I don't remember all of my opinions from this album the first time around. I hesitate to want to look back and see, but I feel like I've warmed up to Hey Joe since then. I covered Electric Ladyland for a video a few months ago. There I warmed up to both the album. I was previously intimidated by it. Now it's my favorite Hendrix album. And I warmed up to Mitch. The rolls and cymbal work on Hey Joe? Jeez. You gotta love the fade out when Hendrix says goodbye, everybody, and then just keeps ad-libbing. He's like the little kid that waves to the audience as they're walking off stage at the dance recital. It was me, I was that kid, I got in trouble for doing that. Lover Confusion is my least favorite song here. The guitar tone is too thin to round out everything else that's happening. Another one that's really grown on me, though, May This Be Love. This one has a sweetness and subtlety that we don't usually associate with Jimi. He compares his love to something as rushing, wondrous, and changeable as a waterfall. I love the lyric, "Fall with me for a million days, oh my waterfall." The incidental moments here are charming. You get the sense of a scrappy young group of musicians having fun with cutting their first record. If you listen really closely with headphones, like really closely, you can hear what sounds like someone pulling up a stool right before the vocal take in Purple Haze. I might be crazy, haven't seen anyone else mention that. Please let me know in the comments if you hear that too. And you also hear him saying, "Damn, man," and I think I Don't Live for Today. As much prowess as Jimi had as a guitarist, he was a wonderful lyricist too. Take The Wind Cries Mary. The progression of the title line from "The wind whispers Mary" to "cries Mary" and finally "screams Mary" is illustrative and beautiful. You don't always have to play the build, you can write it too. It makes you wonder who Mary is and why the wind only calls to her. The best moments here musically are when you can actually hear everyone. I've always sung the praises of Fire. This one rips, just kicks down the door and busts in. This is another great moment for Jimi as a riff guy. Big ups to Noel here, again, because you can actually hear him. He holds it down while Jimi is soloing and just gives the momentum in this song. Mitch skips a beat to reflect Jimi's vocals, or maybe it was the opposite. Whatever it is, I loved that touch. It proves how in tune these guys were with each other so early on. The self-referential spots are charming too. We hear the Purple Haze motif cropping up in I Don't Live Today. Fire and May This Be Love both crop up in Third Stone. Damn, man. What do you have against surf music? Sending a group of alien chickens in a spaceship down to annihilate the human race specifically for surf music in your song? Third Stone is such bullshit. I love it. It's just the guys screwing around with what technology they had available to them. However, Mitch's playing is unreasonably good here. Those fills, it's almost uncalled for. Don't come for me, but I think Jimi was still figuring out the whole singing thing on Are You Experienced. He really nails it by Electric Ladyland, I think, but he sells Foxy Lady because he's got the personality to do it. His voice was always bursting with personality, and he was just so damn likable. The Are You Experienced material is a case of it only getting better with time. All of this stuff was better live when the guys were more comfortable with it and with each other. This is especially true for Foxy Lady. I like pretty much every live version better than what's on here. Finally, the title track. It's another exercise in recording technology that became a hallmark for Psych. 56 years later, that all-over backtracking is still, oh geez, say it with me, bonkers. I got flame broiled in my comments for saying this last time because apparently it's the wrong opinion, but fuck it, I'll say it again. If you're like me and the excessive panning of early stereo mixes really gets on your nerves, seek out the mono version. Why are you booing me? I'm right! All of this considered, I have to say the records that came after, especially Ladyland, make this thing sound like a collection of demos. I think that this album's greatest weakness is its sound. Jimmy's guitar can at times, like on Love or Confusion, sound thin. We want that big sound. He wanted it too, and to get that back then, you used to have to just crank the volume. With this technology, though, it whacks out the mix. Man, why can't they just completely overhaul this album and remix it from top to bottom? Oh wait, I know why, because the Hendrix estate is a fucking disaster. I think I said this in the Ladyland video in reference to Burning of the Midnight Lamp. That first thing that gets lost in these mixes is the bass. Noel's playing is swamped for almost the entirety of Are You Experienced, save for Fire when the other two pull back. But you also have to remember that Noel had only been playing for a couple months when recording began. I wonder if maybe his confidence in his playing just wasn't up there yet, so he hid behind the other two much more experienced players. No pun intended, I swear to God. And the other thing, technology hadn't quite caught up to what these guys were doing yet. I really wish the studios could have captured all these guys better. While the issue of sound was never 100% fixed, for the Experience, you could at least hear Noel on Axis. The Experience had this quiet synergy, not quiet as in volume-wise, God no. People don't listen to me when I say this because Band of Gypsies was better and whatever. I do really like Band of Gypsies though. But when you hear The Experience live, swear to God, they all hit the same cosmic wavelength. You don't necessarily get that from the studio albums because serious audio issues swamp the togetherness. Like last week's record, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Are You Experienced was very much a blueprint for what was to come. This was the launching off pad for the highs to come, and it's a damn good one. Though Hendrix was clearly meant to be the shining star, all three of these guys either already were or would become formidable musicians in their own right. Upon release, Are You Experienced was a watershed moment for a burgeoning genre of music rooted in youth and excitement. It was the blueprint for Psych, it was the blueprint for the Experience themselves, and it was the blueprint for my love of psych rock. This isn't my pick for the best debut album of all time, but Are You Experienced is still up there. My personal favorites are Manic Depression, Hey Joe, May This Be Love, Fire, and Third Stone from the Sun. Remember, if you want to keep up with all of my favorites from all of the Vinyl Mondays, I have a Spotify playlist linked in my description. I update it every week. And that is it. That is Are You Experienced by the Jimi Hendrix Experience. the second time around. What do you think of this album? What do you think of The Experience versus Band of Gypsies? Whatever Hendrix related. Leave a comment letting me know. I love hearing what you guys have to say about albums I love. And if you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday every Monday morning at 11. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!